The next thing I know, there's just so much water in the hull of the boat that I have no stability.
Welcome to the Kayak Bass Connection podcast. I am your host, Jared. This may be the most important podcast I've ever recorded. Why is that? It's because we continue to have kayak anglers who find themselves in life-threatening situations. That's why I'm launching a new series of interviews on our podcast called Kayak Close Calls, Lessons in Survival. So just as the name infers, our goal here is to learn from the near tragic experiences of other anglers, because we all think that accidents on the water happen to other people. It's no different than any other part of our lives, whether it's getting behind the wheel of a car or maybe in our workplace. We think when something bad happens, it's never going to happen to us. It's always other people. So we don't really get prepared for something like that to happen. My goal with this series of interviews is not to get clicks on YouTube. It's not for any other reason than one. The only reason for these interviews is to get you home safely. Kayak fishing can be a very safe activity, but there are some risks. I think we're foolish if we don't recognize that the risk that we have being so close to the water, sometimes not in sight of other people that are on the water and power boats. Our equipment sometimes gets us in trouble. So every one of these close call interviews will examine an incident on the water, hopefully from the perspective of the surviving angler, and break down those lessons so we can all reach that goal of getting home safely to our family. The Kayak Close Calls series only works when people are willing to share their own stories. And sometimes that can be rather embarrassing when something happens to you. Some people are not proud of the situation they found themselves in. They don't want to talk about it. And I want to ask people, please contact me if you're willing to talk about those instances so other people can learn from your experience and we can all be safer on the water. I'll put my email address in the comments on the bottom of the video. But for our first interview in the series of Kayak Close Calls, Lessons in Survival, one of our friends at the Southern Illinois Kayak Club shares a very close call that he just had in a southern lake. So let's get right to the interview. I'm here tonight with our friend Jonathan Kessler, who has an amazing story to tell us about exactly the type of incident we're talking about. It's a very dangerous situation that happened on the water that thankfully he's here tonight to tell us the story. And I think it's something we can all learn with. This just happened just in early November 2025, and Jonathan is very, very gracious to share this story with us in hopes it helps him out. So thanks for coming on and being willing to discuss this again, Jonathan.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
So as I understand, this started out as kind of a bucket list trip for you, right? It was a lake that you've always wanted to take a kayak to, and didn't go quite as we hoped.
I have a good friend that I grew up, we grew up down the street from each other since we were little kids. He's been down in Houston working for the last, 10 years or so. And it had been at least probably 8 or 9 years since I'd been down to visit him. I said, well, I've had a lot of time off recently. What a great opportunity before I started working again. This last couple of weeks, I'll take a week and go down, visit him on, visit him in Houston. And while I'm on that trip, I'll stop at a couple bucket list lakes on the way down there. And since I'm going to be there for a week, I figured, hey, I'll take a day, let him get back to work and with the family and go across the state. My plan was I was leaving Cape Girardeau and going across Arkansas on my way down to Houston and stop at Cato Lake on what would have been that Monday. I left Sunday night. And then I was going to stop. Then I stopped at Toledo Bend. I was going to stop there Monday, Tuesday. And then I was going to spend a day in Houston. And then I was going to run across OHIV, maybe Lake Fork for like a day or two.
Oh, yeah.
And then run back to Houston, spend another day with my buddy, and then come back home, right? So it was like this huge bucket list trip, coupled of 3, 4 of the best bass lakes across Texas and the Louisiana border.
Oh yeah.
I was really excited for this.
Oh, talk yeah. It's stuff that everybody just dreams about, especially at the end of your tournament season. You're at fall, fall fishing down there, warmer weather, get a little extra time on the water.
Yeah. That's exactly how I was thinking. I was like, November up here is usually the time of the year. It's like time to start packing your stuff up, putting it
Mm-hmm.
inside, start thinking about cleaning your reels. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, just one last hurrah, get down there, warmer weather. The bass are chasing shad. They should be easy to find. It was gonna be a really good trip.
Nice. So you launched. Was your first day there at
So the
Toledo Bend?
first
You
day
launched.
I launched at Cato, and for those of us up
Okay.
here, one of my worries during this trip, especially for Cato and Toledo Bend, the first two lakes on the docket, was alligators.
Yeah.
These,
Exactly. We're not used to
there's
that in Illinois. Yeah.
not used to that up here in Illinois and Missouri. And so, and Cato is a big infestation sort of. It's a big shallow lake, and so I was pretty worried about it. But
Mm,
I had fun. Cato was an interesting lake. It's a huge cypress swamp. There's just cypress trees across the entire lake, all the way across. And I got up into one of the river arms and got on them towards the end of the day. And I was like, I'm on them. This is going to be a fun
nice.
trip. I
Yeah.
always repeat this for the next couple. So after I left Cato, I went down that evening to Toledo Bend, and to kind of make this a fun, even more fun and interesting story. I didn't plan this out all that well, so I thought, look, one of the biggest, well-known bass fishing areas in the country. Like, there's going to be places to stay, and like it'd have a little bit of an infrastructure built up. So I get down to Toledo Bend at around 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. Sun's already set because of the time change, and it is just, or I think it's right before the time change, and it is just dead. There's nothing open. There's no hotels. Like
No,
I'm looking at
no
Google, like
hotels.
where's the hotels here, and go to one, and it's just a closed motel.
Mm.
So I ended up staying at a golf resort uh, just on the Louisiana side of Toledo Bend. And my game plan for Toledo Bend was there's a brand new launch. It's a beautiful launch right on, I can't name the road, but there's a big bridge that runs right across the middle of Toledo Bend, runs from the across from the Louisiana side to the Texas side and back. And right off that bridge on the north side of it, on the Texas side, a brand new launch, no ramp fee, and looked like a good place. It was maybe about 2 miles north of an area that looked really interesting to fish. Some areas on the main lake that had some jetties coming out into the water.
Mhm.
A lot of cypress stumps, and uh, launched. It was a beautiful day. The water still had a lot of chop on it that day. Even though the wind report was really low. And this is like one of the things that I really want to emphasize was I planned this trip and I was really excited looking at the weather because Toledo Bend is a lake that's the size of nothing that we have in Illinois.
Yeah, I
It's
just looked up 181,000 acres.
yeah.
181,000 acres is Toledo
I
Bend.
don't know if it's still true, but at one point I know it was the biggest lake in Texas. So it runs, like a third the length of the Louisiana Texas
Mm.
border along, I believe, the Sabine River. So, and if you've watched a lot of bass events, they fish there frequently. They have a lot of events there, the Sabine River south of there, and it's known for just producing just giant largemouth. And so I come out of that launch. I have to go out probably about a quarter mile to get under the bridge. And then
Hmm.
I kind of hit the main lake and have about a mile and a half, 2 miles south to go to get to this area that just looked really good on the depth charts. And it was right outside of a cove. And on my
Yeah,
way down there, yeah, go
put
ahead.
things in perspective, right? You're in your Hobie PA 14.
Hobie PA 14. I've never had any issues, and I want to emphasize to people, I've been doing this since 2020, and I have never been wet in a kayak. I've never gotten in the water, never had to get in the water. So, and that's from my wilderness system to my PA12 to my PA14. I am newer to having a motor on the boat, and that might have led to some of the issues that happened, as we'll talk about. But safety is not a concern for me in the PA14. I mean, it was built for ocean fishing, and but when I get out into that bridge and I get out into there, despite the wind being low, a lake that large really held a lot of energy still in it from the evening before, and there was still just a large amount of wakes. So I was going through about 2 to 3 foot swells that were coming up the lake, and wind was kind of coming south to north, and the wake was kind of coming south to north, so from the south, and I'm heading south into it. So again, I didn't have too much concern. Water was hitting the front, breaking. I was getting soaked, but it was warm compared to southeast Missouri, and it was sunny. It looked like a beautiful day for fishing. So I spend most of the morning out on the main lake, actually, because when I got to that spot, I was seeing lots of shad. I was seeing bass holding to structure. A couple weeks prior, I had fished the Big Bass 250 out Lake of the Ozarks and saw a similar pattern. So I was throwing big swim baits and Alabama rig down on that structure and getting them to come off, chase, getting a couple hits. Pulled up like a 16 or 17 inch largemouth, a couple spots, and
nice.
Then I said, "Well, this is good, but I'm kind of getting sick of fighting the waves. I'm going to go back into the cove for a bit." So turn the boat around, start heading to the cove. And one of the things that I should mention is it really didn't matter where you were. If you weren't in one of the specific boat lanes, and even in the boat lanes, the lake was drawn down about 4 feet from normal pool. You had to worry about cypress trees. This didn't matter if you were in 2 foot of water or if you were in 40 foot of water. This was a flooded cypress swamp, and the wood from cypress trees don't rot. And if you've seen them, you've been at a Devil's Kitchen, for example, which is this old cypress swamp, that wood stays there right at water level where it breaks off, and you got to worry about that. So, and in a boat, you can troll over to the thing and then bust out with your 250 horse, but that boat lane might be a half mile away from where you're fishing. If you're in a kayak, you got to get over to that. I was just kind of slowly making my way through the landmines, so to speak, but made it back into the cove. And that's when I kind of noticed something was up. I just started feeling the boat list, particularly to my left, pretty hard. And I was like, that's unusual. So opened up the hatch to check it out. Definitely was just taking on water. But I had been out there for probably about 4 hours at this point, and I had been taking water from the top a lot through the swells. So my assumption was, well, when I was out in the main lake and hitting those swells coming through, I just took on water from the top, and it came in through. If you got any wires in your kayak, you got ways for water to get in the top of the hole.
Yeah, little at a time, especially with those kind of swells.
So I didn't worry too much. Go back into the back of a creek channel where I finally nice shallow spot. At this point, though, I want to point out I'm probably about 4.5 miles back to the ramp. And so I get out, I check the hole, I do a little bit better of an investigation. But the water that I'm sitting in, remind you, is potentially gator infested. Now I'm standing in it. And
so you got real shallow and got out and started looking at the hole?
Got real shallow in a creek, in the back of a creek bed, and kind of pulled the boat into the creek and got out. The ground was really soft. It was too soft for me to be able to do anything. There wasn't rocks. There wasn't anything hard underneath of it. So that kind of limited me. And I'll tell you, right now, sitting back there in the corner is going to end up in my kayak is a bilge pump. If I would have had that bilge pump with me at that moment right there, it would have it could have made my trip a lot more fun and saved me a lot of hassle and potentially saved my life if I would have had it and something worse would have happened. So I had too much gear on my kayak and too soft of a surrounding to get anywhere to take anything out to try to dump it or drain it. Didn't have a sponge or anything with me to do much of that either, which are all, I think, reasonable options to a bilge pump as well. But I also was sitting there going, well, I'm in calm water now. This came in over 4 hours of being out there. And at that point, it crossed my mind, and I said, in my head to myself, I said, well, if I think it's going to be fine, and I'm in this cove, and on the way back, I'm going to be going with the wind, I shouldn't have anything to worry about, but it's not worth risking it. And I said, it's a lot better to lose a couple hours of fishing than to be swimming. Like this thought crossed my head 2 or 3 times as I got back into my kayak, pushed off, dropped the motor, and was basically going straight back to the launch to be able to check things out. And presumably in my head, I just found this. I'm doing everything that I think's right.
Yeah, making good decisions. The fishing is now secondary. Your safety is now primary.
Yes, and it was safety's what I got to do. I need to get back to the launch, and I started heading out for the launch. On my way out of that cove, and we're not talking like a little cedar cove. This is the cove is a half mile across maybe. I noticed a dock. There's docks all around the lake sporadically, and saw a fuel pump on my map. And I think the best decision, if I knew now what I know now, would have been just go to that ramp and try to call an Uber or somewhere to get to my truck. I didn't know that was a launch or a ramp over there.
Okay.
I just thought it was another dock. But in either case, but again, in my head, I'm not constantly taking on water. This is just from the wash in the morning. But I'm going to play it safe anyway. I'm going to head straight back to the ramp, and I start V-lining it out of that cove, get back out onto the main lake. I do take the boat path out so that I can move quick with the motor and not worry about the stumps. And I am heading up the boat path, turns north out of the cove, and then the boat path basically takes 2 channels. You can go way out into the middle of the lake, or you can go left into this next cove north of there that's still south of the bridge. And to take either, to kind of take the main way that I need to get to back under the bridge, probably would add a mile around the cypress swamp to take that main boat lane out into the middle of the water where it's probably 60, 70, 80 foot.
Yeah, and you've also got the wind's going to be probably stronger there.
And the wind's stronger and the waves are stronger. So I kind of split the difference. I said, I'm going to take my risk. I fished my way in across that cypress swamp. And I said, well, I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to go across the middle of this, keep an eye out for stumps, try to avoid them. And so I start heading across it. And as I'm heading across it, I just start feeling the water. Like all of a sudden, the boat just starts listing more and more. I keep trying to level it out, try to get the water kind of into the middle of the boat. The Hobie's kind of got 3 pontoons in the middle of it. And the water was clearly filling in on that left pontoon. And at this point, because I split the difference, now I'm about a mile from the Texas coast.
Oh gosh!
About 2 miles from the Louisiana coast, in the middle of this cypress swamp. And the next thing I know, there's just so much water in the hull of the boat that I have no stability. The stability from the 2 pontoons, when they get flooded with water, you lose all stability. There's now that I have to slow down because I can't steer with all that weight and the lack of stability if I am coming towards a tree. Now there's the wash coming up and hitting me, and I just remember thinking, this is bad, but it's a Hobie. She's still floating. And then things got real bad really fast. And essentially it hit a point with the water in the hole where there was 0 stability, no ability to steer the kayak, and it was listing and so low in the water was coming over the back gunnel.
Oh my gosh!
And I And I remember I kind of bumped a cypress tree because I had lost that steering,
Hmm.
and that kind of knocked the stability. And I remember the front of the kayak, where the kind of the Jake plate is on the front left of a Hobie, went all the way down under the water, and water come rushing into the thing. So I
Hmm.
lean right and pull it back, and and there's, in my mind I'm thinking, well, water should drain out the scupper holes and drain out, and I should be able to get my flotation back, and it just
Hmm.
wasn't coming back. I couldn't lift the boat because once it kind of
Hmm.
sunk down, all the water in the hole pushed forward and moved forward, and it weighed about as much as me, and I wasn't able to push back to be able to get that water to settle back down in the bottom of the boat and move back towards the middle or the bottom of the boat to give me that high plane. And so I'm kind of sitting there, and now I'm just going, I got to get to shore. So I kind of
Yeah.
get the boat pointed towards the Texas coast, and I hit the motor a little bit, and because there was so much water listing me one way, it basically took me left right into a cypress tree. Uh, got caught on a rod thing, and then the whole boat just kind of went bloop
Bloop.
and just flipped all the way over, just like that. It had no stability in it anymore because there's just so much water in the hole, and there was no stopping it.
Hmm.
In my case, I was really fortunate. I was wearing my PFD all day. My PFD uh, went off. I always keep it charged. I've had it go off a couple times in the hull of the
Guess you have
kayak.
you have an inflatable one.
So I have one of those automatically inflatable PFDs.
Okay.
Well, once it hit the water, it went off. I didn't have to manually inflate it or pull the cord or anything. Tightened it down as tight as I could get it. Had about a minute sitting there going, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
Boat was
What's
completely
next?
upside down. I fortunately I realized, well, my phone is locked into, and I keep my phone tethered to the kayak, so it was locked in. It had flipped over with the boat underwater.
Hmm.
I have a iPhone, which I think is just new enough that it has some water resistance to it. So I reached under the kayak, I pulled my phone out, checked it for service, had service.
Wow.
Thought, I don't have any of the local emergency numbers. My only option at that point, because I was so far away from either coast, I felt like if I swam, I risked exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in where I was sitting, I was right next to the cypress tree, and so I was holding
Hmm.
on to a cypress tree. I didn't need to tread water or swim. I kind of had a safety spot there,
Yeah.
and so I basically just pulled out the phone, dialed 911. I very fortunately I had a good idea of my bearings and where I was on the lake because I spent so much time looking at my graphs and looking at the charts. So I gave them a very detailed description. I was like, I'm a mile south of the bridge that runs across the lake. I'm about a third of the way towards the Texas side, about a mile, maybe a mile or half mile off the Texas side, and at least 2 miles off the Louisiana side. I was in a kayak and I flipped over. Um, the 911 um, operator, I think, was really serious. And for those of you that have been kind of following kayak bass fishing at national level, I think everybody saw what happened. And this is on the exact same lake, Toledo
Hmm.
Bend, where that young college student passed away just a couple months prior.
According to the Texas game wardens, 21-year-old Peyton Hughes' body was recovered Friday morning near the Alpine Marina. That's 35 hours after he went missing on the Toledo Bend Reservoir. The department says Hughes was a student at Campbellsville University in Kentucky, and he was pre-fishing for a Bassmaster competition when he went missing. The Sabine County Sheriff's Office says Hughes was found about 200 yards north from where his kayak was initially found.
Mm-hmm. And so immediately you could kind of hear the severity in the voice in the emergency and their voices to scramble people. She immediately got in contact with the sheriff's office, the fire department over on the Texas side. I believe the 911 operator that picked up was in the Louisiana side. And they were able to scramble sort of a fire department had a boat near the ramp and was able to kind of scramble that volunteer firefighter that has that boat and get a sheriff out there. And it took them 28 minutes from when I called until they showed up.
That's actually remarkably fast, I think.
And it was, and if you look at where I was, they launched actually from the launch where that I had passed and didn't really realize that it was a launch.
Oh gosh.
So
So
they
where you saw
launched
that
from
pump
there,
was,
where
that was a
that pump
launch.
was, where that fuel was.
Hmm.
That was where they launched from, and they came from that side and around and kind of followed my path up. And it was probably about 2 miles from there. They came around and found me quickly, got me in the boat. We tied up the kayak, salvaged what we could. Of course, I don't use line ties on my rods, so I lost
Hmm.
most of my rods and reels in the bottom of Toledo Bend.
Oh, okay.
But I can tell you, while going through that, while getting in the boat, whatever rod, reel, bag of bait that I pulled up out of the water and off the kayak was more, at that point, made me feel gracious that that
Yeah.
anything was salvaged off the
Yeah.
kayak. But we kind of tied it up and towed us into that launch. One of the really sobering things, talking to them, because they had been there months prior, involved in the search for the gentleman that was lost, was they told me he was found within 200 yards of the launch that they launched from, that I had passed on my way out of that cove.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, the thought had, just crossed my head multiple times, like, thank God I didn't forget my PFD in the
Mm.
car or anything dumb like that. Although that was a
Mm.
situation where I would have went straight back and got it. But just the general consensus and the humbling feeling that, like, from the moment that I realized something was wrong, I felt like I made every decision that I could to try to be as safe as I could have been on the water, and it still ended in an emergency 911 call.
Yeah, you set yourself up to handle that problem when it occurred, but still you ran out of options.
Yeah, and I that's why I'm glad to share my story, in the sense that I think there's, like, it's something that people can take away, because I have
Mm.
been on the water over a 100 and some times, and never have I ever felt unsafe. Have
Hmm.
I ever felt a need to take some of these precautions? But there's definitely some things that I will be doing different going forward, in terms of how I take and prepare for these types of events. Because, like I said, this $15 bilge pump, manual bilge pump behind me, would
Mm.
have, I guaranteed, saved those rods, saved those reels, and potentially saved my life if it had been
Yeah,
at that point.
could have gotten you back to that ramp or any
Got me
ramp.
back to that ramp so that I could, in a safe fashion. There's no doubt in my mind I would have been able to use that to bilge out enough water to keep my boat stable, to keep it well afloat. So, that's one thing. Sponges would be another way, if it's a little bit of water that you may be worried about, and to
Hmm.
get little bits out whenever you have gotten the bulk out with the bilge pump. And, something that we talked about off the air a little bit is keeping something on your person. If you do have any pre-existing medical conditions, if you are in that situation. And I was also really fortunate. It was November. The water temp was sitting around 73 down there that day.
Yeah, that'd been a lot different if you were in
It
Illinois
would have
or
been a
Missouri.
very different and a
Yeah.
very much longer 28 minutes if that
Hmm.
water temp was 5-10 degrees cooler.
Yeah.
And so, there was a lot of fortunate things that happened in my case. But I know in March we're going to be fishing in water that's going to be colder than 72 degrees. When we're up at
Yeah.
Banner Marsh with
Yeah.
for the Sick Classic, we're going to be in water that's going to be, very likely in the low 60s or 50s even.
Yeah.
And so, taking those precautions into account. And so, in addition to those things, having something on your person that kind of has your emergency contact information if you are found unconscious in the water. If you have any immediate medical conditions, having that on that card on your person. So if you have drug allergies,
Hmm.
blood donor information, if you're a rare blood receiver, or require a rare blood type as a receiver, then having that information on your person might be something that could save your life in an emergency situation. When I did get to shore with the rescue team, I saw the EMS and got checked out for hypothermia and other signs, and everybody was very, me especially was happy. I'm okay, and everything was good.
Yeah.
With warm water temps, and everything was well. But I issue this as a warning to everybody that goes out there that you cannot predict everything that will happen when you're out there on the water.
Absolutely. The very, very nature of the kayaks, we're closer to the water than boaters are. Crafts are smaller, not as stable. They're safe fishing machines, but mechanical devices break. And in this instance, you had basically, as I believe, we think it was a seal on a hatch that failed on you. Is that what you think?
So what I think was happening was I have some electronics that are built underneath of my back hatch. And it didn't allow the hatch to close. Like the hatch would close and lock, but I don't think it was allowing a full seal, particularly on the left side. And so as I was motoring in the high swells, water was coming over the gunnel in the back of the boat. If you've ran a stern mount motor, you know that it kind of causes that boat to really list back and up, especially on a boat like a Hobie, which is not really designed for a motor. So that listing dropped the rear end, and I think was allowing some of the water from the wake to come up and over the rear gunnel, which wasn't being drained through the scuppers properly, but was instead coming in the hatch and basically causing it to take water. And what my thought was, I need to get back to the ramp quickly. And I think as I sped up, the faster I went, the more wake would come into the back gunnel.
And
and
water introducing.
It's a race. Do you go fast to get back to the ramp faster if there's water, there's a hole in your boat and water's coming in?
Yeah.
If I had known that, I might have just really went slow and tried to get back really slowly. But at that point, I tried to diagnose where it was coming from. I still haven't 100% diagnosed it.
Okay.
But whether it's a small hole around the scupper, whether it's the back hatch, how I got back might have played a role in that had I known.
Yeah.
Other things I point out, and I forgot to mention this, but in that 28 minutes, while I was far from the bank, I might have been about 100 yards still from the boat lane that went that direction. And 2 pontoon boats drove through that boat lane right past me, 100 yards from me probably. And I yelled and waved. I have a bright red, the bottom of my kayak, which was visible, is bright red in the water. And neither one saw me, or if they did see me, they didn't stop.
Damn.
And I yelled and waved my arms. The one thing I had with me and didn't think about grabbing was I did have a whistle in the hatch, which is a requirement. But it's one of those things where in my life vest, when it popped, was bright fluorescent yellow. So, bright yellow life preserver on in the water a mile off the coast, Toledo Bend, bright red kayak. And I asked when the rescue people got there and I got out of the water, one of the things was I was kind of like, how hard was I to see? And they said, you're pretty hard to see. And at that point, the lake had calmed down a little bit from the morning. So I was probably sitting in, ranging from 6 inches to a foot where the swells. But just that 6 inches to a foot made it nearly impossible to see a kayak sitting out in the water 100 yards away.
Yeah, and you hope that whistle would have helped, but you have somebody with a motor running, who knows what else they're doing, and but it does increase your odds, definitely.
Yeah.
And let me ask this: is that whistle probably going to be in your life jacket now?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
So
having
it's,
access to the bilge pump, you know,
yeah.
there's a number of things that I could have done better that wouldn't have cost a lot of money, you know.
Hmm.
And then in terms of property loss, I will say this: I'll give a shout out to Kistler Rods. I've been a member of the Kistler team for several years,
Hmm.
and um, I let them know a little bit about the situation, and they did me a solid and gave me a really good early Black Friday discount. We'll
Oh,
say
yeah.
to help
Oh,
replace most of my lost equipment. So
well,
I
that's good.
and this is my second or third interaction with the owner there, Trey.
Hmm.
He's just an outstanding human and an outstanding business owner, and I can't say
Yeah.
enough wonderful things about Kistler rods down there. If you haven't tried a Kistler rod, try one.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I would be singing their praises too. That's awesome. It's too bad you had to get it that way, but yeah, at least they helped you out a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
very much.
well, that's an incredible story, and I'm glad you're here to tell it. Uh, Literally, I was just looking up the story about the kayak angler that died, and I mean that was a month before you were there.
Yeah, it was right
You
around a
know,
month.
yeah,
And there was a lot of question marks still surrounding that, and
yeah,
so I had my concerns, but it's a lake that gets fished by kayaks frequently.
hmm,
I've been in rough water before in the Hobie.
yeah,
Never personally felt concerned. Never personally felt worried about my safety. Not like it was whenever it got to that point. It
yeah,
was surreal sitting there, and I was in shock for a while, just sitting there going, "Wow, I just can't believe this happened." Um,
yes.
so,
And I wonder how much of this is that we do ask a lot of the kayaks that we use. If we go fishing, I mean the PA-14 sort of like my boat is like they're made they're a fishing machine. But
yep,
as we continue to add stuff, we have to realize that may
you gotta
have
wait.
unintended consequences.
Yeah, and
And
that's what I pointed out. The Hobie is not designed for motor, and there are boats
mhm,
out there now that are designed for motors.
yeah, more all the time. Yeah.
There's a question mark surrounding if this was because when I was gunning it, like water's coming in the hatch,
Mhm.
over the gunnel and into the hatch. You got to ask yourself, as we add things to this, as we upgrade, it makes fishing a lot more convenient. It makes fishing a lot
Mhm.
more fun, but it also adds a layer of danger, and it makes things more complicated when you're out there on the water.
Yeah.
So, I was sitting there next to this boat. I have 100 amp hours of batteries sitting there right next to me. I
Oh
didn't have an
man.
opportunity to go switch them off before it flipped over,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Oh wow.
um, these are the types of concerns that you should worry about. How you have your seat situated when you're
Hmm.
moving fast across the water. Um, making sure that your weight is balanced and that items are locked down. One thing I remember was that I don't think the battery. I keep one battery underneath my seat, and I don't think it was locked down. Which, like, even a couple inches of it sliding, because it is the 36-volt 50 amp
Yeah.
hour battery. It's
Yeah.
a
It's got a
big
little weight
heavy.
to it. Yeah.
It's got a little weight to it. It sliding 1 or 2 inches one way or the other way could have
Hmm.
been a difference in me being able to get that stability back, at least
Yeah.
temporarily. I don't know if at that point it would help me get off the water, but
Well,
um,
I think it's fair to look at every little thing because sometimes those little cascading events, little things can add up
yeah.
to a big
And
problem. So.
there's times historically in the past, I remember I wouldn't always bungee down my tackle box. I was
Mhm.
so secure with it being back there.
Yeah, this boat's
Um,
never turned over before.
Never turned over before.
Hmm.
Uh, I bungee it down, all the time now, especially with the motor. But uh, having something like that that's not strapped down could be the difference between you tipping over and not tipping over.
Yeah.
So taking those little steps before you get on the water to just check your safety,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
To be smart before you get on the water. Think about
Yeah.
what you need. Having, the whistle may not be convenient to have around your neck, especially if you want to have your camera, you got your POV
Hmm.
camera nowadays, you got your, I keep a joystick to control my motor on my neck too. but having it to where I don't have to go dig through a hatch to get it out, it
that's
could have got me out of that water about 15 or 20 minutes earlier.
yeah.
And if the water was 5
Hindsight is
degrees
always
colder,
2020.
yeah,
It's like spare tire. You don't worry about what your spare tire looks like until you need it. It's out of sight, out of mind a lot of times.
true.
So, it's a horrible experience to go through, but I'm sure that you have a deeper appreciation for a lot of things at this point. And I think next year, maybe when more people watch this podcast, they're going to find out, hey, maybe I can do some of these little things to make sure that I don't end up in the same situation or worse.
Please do. And as the new director of SIC, we have our new rule book. We've taken a lot of, a hard look at the rules. We've taken a hard look at state law, and we are fortunate to never have had a serious event.
Mm-hmm.
I say that with a caveat, was that in the first year of SIC, I know that there were people that got wet.
Mm-hmm.
And they were close to shore and near people, and the lake wasn't that deep where they were. There was a lot of benefits to that. And a lot of the lakes that we fished, you can put yourself in those positions where you're over an area that's 3-4 foot deep, which doesn't always mean that it's safe, but it may not hit you just how quickly a condition can turn, and you can take every precaution, but the bad stuff can still happen.
Yeah.
And I just encourage everybody to go through the scenario. I had to live it. And if you're watching this, you can hopefully think about some of those things too. But like, before you get on the water, think about, am I doing everything I need to do to be safe? And as the director, I know that I'm going to be taking a few precautions to make sure that I can do what I can do to make sure that you are all safe as well. And one of those things is, and I better not, probably shouldn't advertise this because nobody's going to bring batteries anymore. I have 100 AA batteries in the back of my Tahoe now, so that if anybody needs a 360 light before they go out, 360 light batteries are burned out before a tournament. Know before you come grab your wristband, and then pick up some AA batteries with you as well. So, it's a small thing that I can do, and the directors are the other board of director members from SIC, and I are going to be getting together, and I think talking about what are maybe some things that SIC can do to just help you all take those little steps to think about that, and just make everybody, the safer we are and the better we are, the better we're all going to be off together. And I don't want what happened to me to happen to anybody, and I don't want anything worse than what happened to me to happen to anybody.
Oh God,
not at a SIC event, not anywhere. But
yes,
we just want to think that, and don't just take these steps on tournament days. Don't wait till tournament morning to think about the safety.
Yeah,
fishing, practicing.
Yeah, on a tournament on tournaments, our lakes are not huge that we usually fish on. Usually, there's someone that might hear that whistle, that's going to be in that area, but you can't count on that. You can be back of the cove, and hyperthermia can hit you, in just a minute or two. You gotta be able to act and save yourself now. So,
and maybe not everybody knows this, and I can't even tell it to you off the top of my head. Jared, maybe there's like an equation that people use about safety.
Yeah, they say the rule of 120. It's like if the water temperature and the outside air temperature don't equal 120 degrees, you risk a hypothermia or something of that nature. But I can tell you that I always think that is pretty darn liberal. I think that water temperature affects people more than they think it would.
Yeah,
especially if any pre-existing medical conditions or anything like that.
Yep. From my experience, I was probably pre-hyperthermic or minor hypothermia at 73 degrees.
Yeah.
I can tell you, the water temps in March, the water temps in April, where we fish, they are not going to be 73 degrees.
No, not at all. No.
They probably won't be there yet in May either.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't have a wet or dry suit, but because I've seen the ones that are available and they just seem like I wouldn't wear them. But you can do things. There are some bibs and things you can get that actually lock down to make sure you don't have water going into your torso. But you're still going to have to deal with your body's your upper body's going to get wet in that cold water. But anything you can do to limit that exposure is a big deal.
I'm always thinking of things, and I just thought of this right now. I will probably try to find a warm blanket to keep in my Tahoe as well for the tournaments that I'm directing through at least June. Because if somebody does get wet, if somebody does get in the water, the most, you when you get out, you want to make sure you get out of your wet clothes and you want to get into something warm. So I would encourage people to have like some warm clothes in your car, dress appropriately, making sure that you dress warm, even maybe having layers and being warmer than what the air temperature is, can be really helpful. And, again, I was fortunate that the water I was fishing was pretty warm, but knowing what the dangers are associated with that. And you may think hypothermia is something that you get out, warm up, and you're fine, but it's not like that. You can have lasting effects. It can last days. It can put you in the hospital. And so it's something to take serious. And this idea of being safe on the water, again, review the SIC rule book, because there are some things about, you can be disqualified from a tournament if you're doing something that if you're going beyond your limits intentionally, for example. There's some wording in there. If it's an emergency situation or dangerous situation, we want to make sure that you stay safe. If there's lightning, we want you to get off the water. So
absolutely. As much as we love fishing and take it seriously, it's just fishing. We want you to get back home safely. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to rewalk us. I know sometimes that can be a little bit painful talking about some of these life-threatening events, and I'm sure that you've helped a lot of people tonight by sharing your lessons learned. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right.